Okay, so believe it or not, there's actually a publicly available data set out there where someone actually figured out all the appearances that Marvel superheroes had with each other in different comic books. And we can use that to figure out relationships between superheroes in the Marvel universe and other aspects of them that we might find interesting. So let's start off with a more simple example where we just try to find the most popular superhero in the Marvel dataset. Is Spider-Man or the Hulk the most commonly appearing superhero in Marvel comics? Well, the answer might surprise you, so let's go dig in and find out. All right, time to get to the fun part of the course. So we have this data set of Marvel superheroes. Let's figure out who the most popular superhero is in the Marvel universe. And we actually have a social network that someone constructed of superheroes just by looking at what comic books people appeared in together. So the idea is that if a comic book character appeared together with another comic book character in the same comic book, they're considered to be friends, if you will. They have a co-occurrence, and they are therefore connected. And you may have people connected in complex patterns here. So this is really like a social graph that we're dealing with here. So let's say, the Hulk appeared in a comic book that had the Thor in it, and he also appeared in another comic book that had Iron Man in it. But maybe Iron Man and Thor appeared together, but, they never had all three of them together in the same comic book. And maybe Spider-Man's off to the edge here, and maybe he appeared with the Hulk, but never appeared with Thor, never appeared with Iron Man. So these complex relationships going on that exist in these networks. But we're going to start with a simple example and just try to figure out who's the most popular superhero. And we're going to define that by who is the superhero that appears with the most other characters. Okay? So let's take a look at our input data. Basically, there's two files that we're going to include here and take a look at. One is called marvelgraph.txt, and this is something I prepared ahead of time. And the format here is just a given superhero ID, followed by a list of all the superhero IDs that character appeared with in other comic books. So every line has the first entry being a given hero, followed by a list of all the other heroes that they appeared with, and so on and so forth. Now, an important point, a hero may span multiple lines. So in our source data, they would actually break really long lines up into multiple lines, and that's been carried along here. So you can't just count up the number of entries and be done with it. We actually need to aggregate things together, as we've seen so many times before in this course. We also have a marvelnames.txt file that maps superhero IDs to actual human readable names. So for example, hero ID 5306 is Spider-Man/Peter Parker. We've probably heard of, but there's also a lot of more obscure characters in there too. I don't know who General Yuri Spetsborough is, or Sphinx, or Anton Spurzel, or anyone, but the Marvel universe is pretty huge, it turns out. So there's an introduction to your format of data. We have a lookup table of IDs to hero names, and then a graph file that maps each superhero ID to all the other superhero IDs that they appeared with. So our strategy for finding the most popular superhero, or more specifically the one that had the most appearances with other superheroes, the most co-occurrences, we're going to start off by parsing out our file and map that input data to a key value pair RDD of hero ID to number of co-occurrences per line. So we're just going to count up how many other heroes they appeared with per line. And since we can actually have heroes that span multiple lines, we're going to need to add them up using reduce by key. And that will give us the final count of how many occurrences by hero ID exist. And then, since we want to find the most popular superhero, we're going to have to flip that around. So like we've done before, we're just going to swap the keys with the values and end up with a key value RDD of the number of occurrences as the key and the hero ID as the value. And then call max on that RDD to find the hero with the most co-occurrences. Finally, we'll look up the name of the winner and display the result. So let's look at the code and run it. All right, we have our general strategy and how we're going to figure out who the most popular superhero in the Marvel universe is. So let's dive into some code and see how it all comes together. A little bit more of a complicated example than we've done in the past, but you should still be able to wrap your head around it pretty easily.